In a survey that is set to make Republican heads explode, more members of Generation Z, people between the ages of 12 and 17, are identifying as LGBTQ than they are Republican. According to a poll released by Axios on Tuesday, the survey found that of more than 6,000 young people in 50 states, only 21% of Gen Z say that they're conservative Republicans, compared to 32% of baby boomers, who are people born between 1946 and 1964. Now, when it comes to political parties, about 36% of Gen Z adults identify as Democrats, about 30% say that they are independent. Independent doesn't necessarily mean that they are moderates, that they're in the center, but they don't identify with a particular political party. In fact, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Gen Z is more to the left than the Democrats. Now, with the exception of millennials, Gen Z adults are notably less likely than those in other generations to identify as conservative, which again, Republicans are like, oh no, turns out we can't exactly, appeal to young people because young people despise us.
Oh no!
It's so good. Gen Z adults were also far less likely to identify as white Christians, about 27%, compared with baby boomers, which is 54%, and more likely to identify as not affiliated to any religion, 33%, than any other generation except millennials. All right, and here we go. Turns out Gen Z shaping up to be the most progressive, queerest, and non-religious generation the U.S. has ever seen. Christopher Rufo in shambles. As well as Jordan Peterson and all these, again, far-right figures who are attempting to try to influence the young to make them more conservative. Not working, is it? Now, Melissa Deckman, the chief executive of research and education organization, the Public Religion Research Institute, told Axios, clearly Gen Z does not like to be labeled, and they're not necessarily wanting to hang their hat with any particular party these days. Now, that's referencing the 30% who are identifying as independent. Now, I don't blame them for that. Why do I say that? Well, being progressive doesn't mean that you're a Democrat, okay? There are a lot of, as I mentioned, young people who think the Democrats need to be way more to the left than they currently are. And let me give you an example of a more leftist position than the Democratic Party, Medicare for All. Again, you have a majority of younger people who want socialized healthcare. Another big one that's playing out right now is Israel-Hamas. So Democrats are more sympathetic to Palestinians, 49%, than Israelis, 38%, according to a Gallup survey from spring of 2023. And that's because that we've seen what's been going on in Gaza. We see what's been going on in that area, how people are being treated, and the resistance to a two-state solution. Among younger Americans, the support is actually the lowest, with 42% supporting Palestinians and 40% supporting Israelis. Now, the war ended up exacerbating the difference. From mid-October to mid-November, support for Palestine among young voters jumped from 26% to 52%, according to Quinnipiac. Now, of course, there are some out there that are weirdly blaming TikTok for that. TikTok, it has changed people's minds. By what? Like showing the things that are happening to Palestinians? Oh, I know, weird. It turns out we know when there's injustice going on. We can see it. Look, Israel has been blocking Palestinian statehood for a long time. They've been keeping them in an open-air prison. Is it any surprise that extremist groups like Hamas would end up rising in popularity and getting into positions of power? I don't think it should be. I think the best way to prevent extremist groups like Hamas from getting into power is to ensure that people don't have a reason to turn to them. All right? Now, the right-wing Israeli government under Benjamin Netanyahu has actually done the opposite. They've encouraged this through raids, bombings, illegal settlements, and of course, again, treating Palestinians like second-class citizens. What happened on October 7th was horrifying. It was an extreme reaction to extreme conditions. All right? Now, the sad thing is this could have all been avoided by working with Palestinians to give them independence and statehood. And then, of course, to use, for example, diplomatic power of the United States of America, got kind of a big influence around that world, you know what I'm saying? Around that area and around the world. Using that influence to try to urge both countries to diplomatically work together in order to bring peace, cooperation, and understanding. They don't have to like each other, but they have to allow each other to exist. Now, unfortunately, we're not in that situation because the Israelis are refusing to allow a Palestinian state to exist. Now, once again, younger people are hopeful. They're optimistic. They want peace. They don't want these wars. They don't want the death. They don't want the destruction. Okay? And by the way, younger people, when it comes to Palestinians, have been at the forefront of casualties. Tens of thousands of children have been killed as a result of the Israeli bombings in Gaza. So when you look at that, children are bearing the brunt of all of this. When you look at that, I mean, it's injustice. And so, of course, that's why younger people are calling out Joe Biden, President Biden, to say, please do your part to end this conflict. Don't just blindly send the Israelis whatever weapons without any conditions on them at all, weapons, money, etc., that you can use because you're using our money to then bomb Palestinian children. We don't like that. We're not in favor of that. Okay? And that's why you have left-leaning Gen Zers saying, I'm not interested in voting for Joe Biden, right? His actions right there in just, once again, giving Israel anything it wants, whenever it wants, with no conditions at all to try to end the bloodshed. No, I'm not interested. And so I can understand that. And look, Joe Biden should also understand that. Look, there's an estimated 40.8 million Gen Zers that are going to be eligible to vote in 2024. Now, not all of them will. Of course not. Voter apathy is pretty high, especially among young people, right? That said, if you make some policy changes, you can get some of those to vote. A poll released last month by the Institute of Politics at Harvard Kennedy School found that younger Americans appear less likely to vote in 2024 than they did in 2020. That is not good. That is real bad. If you're going to leave those potential voters on the table, that's not going to be smart when it comes to re-election, especially since this election is incredibly important. In fact, Democrats are rightly talking about how important this election is. This could be the end of the country. Donald Trump gets into office, that's it. It could be the end of democracy. So act like it. Get these voters to get out and to do this. Youth turnout in 2020 set records. And even though it set records, it was barely enough to hold off Donald Trump. Every single voter matters. Democrats, you need these voters who are more progressive, more diverse, and are willing to vote if Biden were to take up their issues,